It's 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down on the nightstand because you promised yourself you wouldn't check it. You won't sleep for another hour. But the real answer to why you're awake right now is far stranger than stress or screens. It starts 70,000 years ago, in the dark, with no idea what was making that sound in the grass. Your ancestors didn't sleep the way you do. They didn't have a single 8-hour block, lights off, world paused. Sleep was fragmented, watchful, built for a world that could kill you the second you stopped paying attention. Think about that for a second. What does it mean to evolve in a world like that? It means your brain was never designed for the kind of sleep you're trying to force on it tonight. Anthropologist Carol Worthman spent years studying sleep among hunter-gatherer communities, and what she found broke almost every assumption modern sleep science had quietly built. There was no single bedtime. People drifted in and out of rest in short stretches throughout the night, often waking for an hour or two in the middle, sometimes talking quietly by the fire before drifting off again. Nobody panicked about it. Nobody called it insomnia. It was just night. Compare that to you. You lie down. You expect unconsciousness on command. And when it doesn't come, you assume something is broken. But nothing is broken. You're running an operating system built for a world that no longer exists. Here's where it gets stranger. That middle-of-the-night wakefulness your ancestors lived with? It had a purpose. A predator moving through camp. A fire dying down. A child crying. Someone needed to be semi-alert, almost constantly, in shifts, without anyone scheduling it. So your brain kept a piece of itself on guard. Always. That guard never fully retired. It's still in there. Which is part of why total, silent darkness can feel oddly uncomfortable to some people, why a faint light or a quiet hum can actually help you drift off. Your brain isn't broken when it resists total shutdown. It's doing its job. An ancient, patient, slightly paranoid job. Now picture the scene more specifically. No artificial light, no screens. Just firelight, orange and flickering, casting long shadows across rock walls or animal hide. What did people actually do when sleep didn't come? They talked. Researcher Jerome Lewis, who studied the Mbengeli Bayaka in the Congo Basin, documented something fascinating about nighttime conversation among hunter-gatherer groups. During the day, conversation was practical. Hunting plans, food, conflict resolution. But at night, by the fire, the talk shifted entirely. Stories, myths, songs about ancestors and animals and the stars overhead. Lewis found that these nighttime stories carried a different emotional weight than daytime speech, often touching on cooperation, fairness, and the unseen world. Why would storytelling cluster around the exact hours when sleep refused to come? Because lying awake in the dark, your ancestors needed something to do with their minds. And the human mind, when given quiet and firelight and no immediate threat, reaches for meaning, for connection, for story. You do the same thing now. You just don't call it that. When you can't sleep, what does your brain do? It doesn't go blank. It replays conversations. It rehearses tomorrow. It spirals into half-formed worry, or drifts into memory, or invents elaborate scenarios that will never happen. You're not malfunctioning. You're doing exactly what a wakeful human brain has always done in the dark. You're telling yourself a story, because the alternative, a truly empty mind, almost never happens. There's a reason nighttime worry feels more intense than daytime worry too. Cortisol patterns shift overnight. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that normally puts a lid on catastrophic thinking, becomes less active during certain sleep-disrupted states. So a normal-sized problem at 2 p.m. becomes a monster at 2 a.m. Same problem. Different brain. Your ancestors had monsters too. Real ones, sometimes. A sound outside the camp. A shift in the wind. The fire dying low. Their nighttime vigilance wasn't anxiety in the way we use the word now. It was function. It kept the group alive long enough to see morning. But here's the twist. The fragmented sleep your ancestors lived with for hundreds of thousands of years might not have been the inconvenience we assume it was. Some researchers now argue it may have been adaptive. A built-in window for low-stakes bonding. A buffer of quiet hours where the group reaffirmed its closeness through story instead of survival tasks. The wakeful middle of the night wasn't wasted time. It was social time, just dressed differently than daytime socializing. So what changed? Artificial light changed it. The industrial clock changed it. The idea that sleep should be one unbroken block, judged by efficiency, timed by an alarm, is remarkably new. For almost all of human history, the night had texture. Periods of sleep, periods of waking, periods of quiet talk, repeated until dawn. We compressed all of that into a single demand: fall asleep, stay asleep, wake up on time, or something is wrong with you. No wonder so many people lie awake at 3 a.m. feeling like a failure. They're not failing at sleep. They're encountering an ancient rhythm that modern life has no patience for. Think about what you actually do during those wakeful minutes tonight. You might reach for your phone, scroll something mindless, try to numb the wakefulness instead of using it. Your ancestors filled that exact same window with voice, with each other, with story. You could try lying there and inventing one, not checking a screen, not fighting for unconsciousness, but treating those minutes the way they were treated for most of human history, as a strange, quiet, in-between space. Not broken sleep, just a different kind of night. Because that hour you spend awake isn't evidence of dysfunction. It's a piece of something extremely old surfacing in a world that forgot it was ever there. Your ancestors weren't sleeping straight through the night either. They were listening, talking, telling stories in the dark, waiting for the fire to catch again. There's another piece to this that almost nobody talks about: temperature. Before electric light, before central heating, the body cooled as the night went on. Fires burned low, the air thinned out, and human sleep, it turns out, is deeply tied to that cooling process. Your core temperature drops as you fall asleep, and it rises slightly in the hours before you wake. In a world without thermostats, that rhythm was sharper, more pronounced. The cold itself may have nudged people awake in the dead of night, just enough to stir the fire, just enough to notice the silence, just enough to lie there thinking for a while before drifting back under. So part of your ancestors' wakefulness wasn't fear. It was simply cold, a small, physical nudge built into the architecture of the night. You don't get that nudge anymore. Your bedroom sits at a steady 20 degrees, all night, every night. No fire to stir, no reason to wake and check anything. And yet you still wake up sometimes, right on schedule, as if some part of you is listening for a fire that isn't there. Isn't that strange? An instinct with no job left to do, still showing up anyway. There's a deeper layer here too, one that historian Roger Ekirch uncovered while digging through centuries of diaries, court records, and medical texts from pre-industrial Europe. He found hundreds of casual references to something called first sleep and second sleep. People would go to bed shortly after dark, sleep for a few hours, wake naturally in the middle of the night for a period historians now call the watch, and then sleep again until morning. This wasn't rare or pathological. It was simply how nights worked, mentioned as casually in old records as breakfast or supper. During the watch, people prayed. They visited neighbors. They tended animals. They lay in the dark and thought about their lives, slowly, without urgency, because there was nowhere else to be and nothing else demanding their attention. Ekirch's research suggests this biphasic pattern only disappeared once artificial light pushed bedtimes later and industrial schedules demanded one consolidated block of rest, judged by a clock instead of the sky. In other words, the single 8-hour block you've been told is the gold standard of healthy sleep is not some ancient biological law. It's a side effect of gas, lamps, and factory shifts. It's barely 200 years old. Your ancestors, for nearly all of human history, expected to wake in the night. They built a whole quiet ritual around it. You inherited the instinct. You just lost the ritual that used to go with it. So when you wake at 3 a.m. now, with no fire to tend, and no neighbor to visit, and no prayer ritual waiting for you, that ancient watch period has nothing to do. The instinct fires anyway, but the world around it has gone completely silent. No story circle, no firelight, no one else stirring beside you in the dark. Just a phone, face down, glowing faintly with the promise of distraction. No wonder it feels unbearable. You're standing in the middle of an ancient ritual with no ritual left to perform. Maybe that's the actual fix. Not forcing yourself back into unconsciousness through sheer willpower, not treating every wakeful minute as a problem to be solved, but giving that ancient watch period something to do again. A few minutes of quiet thought. A story you tell yourself instead of one you scroll through. The same impulse your ancestors satisfied around a dying fire, just redirected into the modern version of the same dark room. Because the wakefulness itself was never the danger. It was simply built into being human, long before clocks existed to judge it. There's one more piece worth sitting with. Why does this particular kind of wakefulness feel so personal? Why does 3 a.m. thinking feel like it's revealing some hidden truth about you, when really it's just an old mechanism doing an old job in a new context? Part of it is memory consolidation. Your brain doesn't file away the day's events the moment your head hits the pillow. It sorts through them in waves across multiple sleep cycles, deciding what matters and what gets discarded. When you wake mid-cycle, you sometimes land right in the middle of that sorting process. A half-processed worry. An unfinished thought your brain hadn't gotten around to filing yet. It feels urgent because it's unfinished, not because it's true. Your ancestors had the same unfinished thoughts. Different content, same mechanism. Did the hunt go well enough to last the week? Will the rains come on time? Is that quiet outside the camp ordinary or not? They lay there in the watch and turn these thoughts over, slowly, with nothing to distract them, until either sleep returned or the sky began to lighten. You do the exact same thing now, just with different worries. A message you sent, a deadline, a conversation that didn't go the way you wanted. The mechanism hasn't changed in 70,000 years. Only the content has. And maybe that's the most useful thing to take from all of this. The next time you wake at 3 a.m. with your mind turning something over and over, you can recognize it for what it actually is. Not a personal failure. Not proof that something is wrong with you. Just an old part of your brain doing the same watchful work it has always done, in a room that no longer has a fire to tend or a story circle waiting outside the door. So tonight, when you find yourself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., you're not broken. You're just remembering, in the oldest part of your brain, what the night used to ask of everyone who ever lay awake in it.